Hey, I'm Quincy and I'm a radio personality, but just like you, I'm always wanting to make better health choices for myself and of course for my family. Now that's why I've teamed up with my friend Dr. Dean Tyndall and the fine folks of New Life Naturopathic, the creators of new-lifeweightloss.com, to bring you a podcast focused on giving you the information you need to make the best health decisions for you and your family. Now, that's going to be without sway from what mainstream medicine has become. Now, this podcast, Pursuit of New Life, we're going to release one each Friday. And we're going to focus on debunking the mainstream medicine myths now associated with naturopathic, holistic medicine, while giving you clear insight into ways you can make your health a lifestyle and not a jump from fad diet to fad diet. Experts in the fields of biochemistry, chiropractic, physiology, women's health, and much more will weigh in on a range of topics, all designed to open your eyes, expand your knowledge, and bring you to new life. Now be sure to subscribe to Pursuit of New Life on all the podcast platforms, and also follow us on YouTube at newlifenaturopathic.com, and be joining us every Friday for Pursuit of New Life. Welcome into another episode of Pursuit of New Life. We're thankful that we have the opportunity to share this information with you from our New Life Naturopathic team. Would you subscribe and would you share? Make sure you're checking it out on all the podcast platforms and as well as on YouTube. It is New Life Naturopathic, a great place to go, especially if you want to catch all the graphics and things like that on the video part of the podcast. But if you can only listen, of course, Apple, Spotify, all of that good stuff is available for you, and we'd love for you to share it with your friends. Download, subscribe, all of that good stuff. So last week, we talked about something very important that everybody wants a lot of, and that is sleep. Today, we are going to talk a lot about something that most people don't want and end up having more than they need, and that's stress. And that, of course, can stem from lack of sleep, as we talked about last week. So strap yourselves in, get ready. We're going to talk about stress today. I know a lot of us are looking forward to the insight from our New Life Naturopathic team. And we'll start, as always, with Dr. Tyndall.
Hey, Quincy. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Yes, hey, stress. Stress, what a lovely word.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Again, one of the big things that we deal with, like hormonally, is number one is usually thyroid problems with a lot of people, and the real close second is stress, because stress then definitely throws off the hormonal system and has that play, which I already grabbed my Harrower's chart out to kind of show people how it kind of interacts with the stuff. Stress is one of those big things that we have way too much of it, especially in Western society, and here in the United States, it's go, 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 go. Men are affected by it, women are affected by it, kids are affected by it. It's one of those things. It's not getting any better. It seems to be getting worse for more and more people. The last 2 years, people being at home and being stuck inside was a huge stressor for people. The fear factor that was going through. Needless to say, we work with a lot of people, burned out adrenal glands. Of course, last week we talked about sleep and being affected. Stress definitely affects the quality of your sleep. Stress is a huge problem with Americans. And then again, we try to help patients develop strategies, eating better. That's a huge factor. Most people don't realize it, that eating unhealthy foods just creates a further stress on your body physically and chemically. And then the problem that you run into, though, is a lot of people, when they are stressed, guess what they tend to go to? The foods that make them feel happy, which is, usually bad foods, sugars, the sweets, the cookies, the cakes, the pastas, the sugary coffees, things like that. And so, again, it just becomes a vicious cycle. And what we're trying to teach patients and people is, don't fall into these traps. Here's strategies to do stuff. And then here's nutrition and lifestyle, dietary changes to try to manage stress and get your body as healthy as it can. So when it does, those times of stress comes, that you can get kind of through that process.
Yeah, and you mentioned society, Miriam. I know you wanted to speak to this a little bit, and how Americans are probably the most stressed people on the planet, and that goes back to we're probably the most sleep deprived. We're probably the ones with the most health issues, and all of those things. So, Miriam, I'd love for you to speak to that, and then, of course, talk from your own experience a little bit. You've been fairly transparent on this podcast, letting us know some of the things that you've dealt with, and I think that helps people to know that they're not alone in some of the situations they find themselves in.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to talk about this actually. So from my experience, I was always one of those, go get it kind of a person. Always want to be successful. Shoot for the stars. I was pre med. I wanted to go to med school. School is very important, and there's a lot of pressure internally and from family and all of that to do well. I'm also a very competitive person. I like to win, and
I think we
I
all have
think
that bug a little bit.
right, right. The problem is when everybody wants to win. It's
Right.
like, yes, that's the whole point of a competition, right? But I think the big issue in our society, probably number one, is I think that we have become a live to work kind of a
Hmm.
society, and I think it should be the other way around. If you do work, it should be to live. To
Hmm.
make money, to enjoy life, and to live your life and do what you want at your own will. Freedom's great, right? We kind of take it for granted, but in a way, we're also very restricted. We restrict ourselves. We put a lot of pressure upon ourselves, to do the best and be the best. And I've had my fair share of stress, ever since I can remember, or ever since I knew what the definition of stress was, and before that. Um, and As Dr. Tyndall was mentioning, and I completely agree with this statement, is it's not really getting much better, as social media grows, as we're all on our devices. Also, let's not even get into politics. That's not what we're here for. Um, and it just, it's like a rolling tumbleweed of turmoil, is what I like to call it. And it just keeps turning and turning and rolling.
Picking up
Um,
all kinds of garbage along the way. Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. Great,
That is a good
great
metaphor for the
analogy.
whole. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great way to look at it. I think it's just been an accumulation of just all of that, and we also live in kind of a capitalistic society where money uh, is very important and probably takes priority over happiness. And people say you can't buy happiness. I sort of agree with that, but also if you're living in a capitalistic society, there's some connection there. Money can get you things, but most people want more of it. um, and then it goes back to the whole cycle of um, living to work kind of a thing, and you just kind of lose yourself. I think we've all lost ourselves. I know I
Hmm.
have, just mentally and just socially, and just all of that. And I think it is just so important sometimes to just stop and take a second and just breathe and just focus on converting carbon dioxide into oxygen into carbon dioxide. And that's all we need to do sometimes, and we shouldn't have to feel guilty about doing nothing but that. um and so it is sad that that is how it is, but I do think that there are a lot of outlets, and nowadays, even more so, more of um, uh, I guess conversations on mental health. I think access to mental health care is improving, which is good. There's definitely a lot of choices and options that were not available to us before. A lot of telehealth services, which is great. We offer that too. Um, but I think, it is just so important, and especially after COVID, just like Dr. Hinnell just mentioned, you know, uh, being social is also an important
Mhm.
aspect of mental health, and not being stressed out, um, and being cooped up in our uh, homes, or wherever during the pandemic. I think offset a lot of people, especially people that used to be a lot more social. I think a lot of people that did not have mental health issues probably developed some, at least one during these times. And it was hard. It was difficult. I know it was for me. Um, and I think, it is really important to start facing these issues, and, you know, um, start, thinking of ways to improve them.
Yeah, and I think having conversations like this and actually talking about stress instead of saying that it's not a problem,
Yes.
we've come to know that it definitely is, and trying to change some of those paradigms is important if our society would get a hold of that. Dr. Stuber, what have you seen? And now that we've talked about those couple of years of everybody being stuck inside, what have you seen in your practice? Women talking to you, children even. What have you seen in the aftermath now that people are even maybe even more willing to talk about it? And of course that it is still an issue.
Well, I will say that, I've always heard, like, I'm just stressed out. Women are just stressed out. With time, like over the last 30 years, it's like a runaway train. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. And one of the hard things in practice is when you ask a woman or a child, well, what's causing your stress? They either rattle on like and can't stop 25 things, or they just don't know, like, well, I'm not sure. And I find that trying to isolate, well, you have external stresses and you have internal stresses. And having stress, feeling like you have stress, is a matter of coping, because you can have two people that are going through the exact same thing, and one person is coping okay and they don't feel stressed, and the other person is stressed out to the max. So a lot of stress is rooted in our mind. It's rooted in emotions, and it's rooted in expectations. When you're talking external stresses, a lot of people, they compare themselves to others, especially with social media, TV, um, and they're making a comparison that just isn't, it isn't correct in the first place. Like,
Hmm.
I don't live the same life as a housewife of Atlanta on television with multi-millions of dollars, or uh, Bill Gates' wife or ex-wife. I don't live that same life. So if I'm going to compare myself to them and create stress over it, it's just not real. And the other thing too is how healthy you are on the inside, and the habits you have, what you tap into for health, make a dramatic difference in how you are able to cope with stress. Because I can speak personally, when I feel good and I'm healthy, I definitely cope a lot better, and I feel much less stressed out. And now I know I am less stressed out just by when I look in the mirror, I can see like my skin will break out when I'm stressed out.
Hmm.
So, what we do, a huge part of it is, okay, well, you have these things going on in your life, and we can't change those. You have 4 kids, you have aging parents, you have a husband that's working all the time, you have financial pressures, and everything seems to be expanding, just exploding, the stresses that we have externally. So what I like to do, what we do in general is we need to look at what's going on in your body chemically so we can make you as healthy as you can be so that you can cope with what's going on in your life and you can make good decisions about, hey, do I need to eliminate some of this? Every body tolerates stress differently. So I
Right.
just want to show you a few of the tests that we do. The first one is the Dutch test. There you go. It's the most complete hormone testing that there is on the market. It tests your endocrine system, it tests your brain and your nervous system, and also it tests those neurotransmitters that tell your body when to stress, when not to stress, uh, and how much physical stress you have chemically on your body. Um, the next test um, is our test for cortisol. And what it does is it tests your hormone, your stress hormone that your body secretes is cortisol, cortisone, and it causes chronic inflammation. It basically can over time just destroy your body. It causes chronic exhaustion, chronic sickness, destroys your immune system. So we test it 4 times a day, your levels of cortisol, because it should change at different times of the day. So we can tell how well your body is functioning, how it's responding, how your endocrine system is working. And the third test we have, which is the most comprehensive test we have, I tell people tests just about everything, is our DNA testing. And this one's hard to show because it's 122 pages of reports as far as your complete genetic profile, the DNA SNPs that you may have, weaknesses you may have. And again, it really shows us what you're predisposed to as far as chemically what's going on in your body. Detoxification of the body plays a huge role in how much physical stress your body's going to have. If you're chronically toxic, your body cannot process stress, physical stress, emotional stress, any of that. So by looking at the DNA SNPs, it helps us to differentiate and decide what is the best treatment plan for you, because a lot of people, they just can't change their life. It's gotten so big. There's just things that you have to do, uh, but you want to be as healthy as you can so you can cope with it. I want to just interject before I turn it over to Dr. Tyndall. I was looking up and I shared with him that the number one cause of stress in women, and this is according to the National Institute of Health, is their physical body. The physical changes that a woman goes through between puberty, uh, having their cycle, pregnancy, nursing a baby, on to recovering from having a baby into menopause. And that stress is 2 times greater than all other stress combined, which was really shocking to me because I thought women would say their relationships, their kids, their husband, and then I thought they'd say money. So the physical and emotional burden that women go through, and a lot of that, again, as Marion pointed out, is related to society. I mean, and our expectations. But it is important for women to know what's going on with their body so they can be as healthy as possible. And also, when a woman has understanding, you can share it with your family and hopefully educate them so that they can understand, like, hey, I'm not just going through stress because my mom died or because this child's sick or because they're hurt. It's because I'm physically going through changes that are causing me physical stress, and they're just making me, I'm not able to cope with what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the DNA testing. We did an entire episode on that. So if you missed that, make sure you check on the YouTube channel, New Life Naturopathic, or on where you get your favorite podcast platform and check that episode out because there is a lot to that that tells us a lot. Well, Dr. Tyndall, she just mentioned some of the causes of stress. Why don't we start there?
Okay.
I believe we do, for our YouTube viewers, have a graphic for that to let people kind of see this visually. And then you can break it down for us.
Yeah. So if you're on the YouTube, you'll see basically you have chronic stress, chronic social environmental stresses, homework, poverty, social isolation, things like that. Then you have your physiological stressors. You got your syndromes like diabetes, heart disease, circadian disruption, which is basically disruption of your sleep cycle, other illnesses, chronic illnesses, people who deal with, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, just a whole bunch of other, health issues that are out there. And what's kind of interesting is that this all becomes cyclical, because when you're having stress and you have these problems, these things kind of keep feeding back. You have these feedback mechanisms. That's where like naturopathic care, chiropractic care, all this other stuff comes in, acupuncture, all these other things, meditation come in to try to, then you're trying to break those cycles that keeps you spiraling down as far as your health. And of course, major life events, you have trauma, car crashes, death, divorce, abuse, losing your homes, different things like that. Then you have your individual vulnerabilities, and that's where like the DNA testing comes in, because what we're finding with the DNA testing, some people can handle stress better than others. Some people will process nutrition different than others. Some people have prone to based on their genetic structure, how well they'll sleep, how well they detox. Yeah. So where that DNA testing comes in is especially if you're a person with not a lot of health issues, and you're really looking forward to how do I maximize my health in the future? How do I prevent a lot of these things in the future? That's where that DNA testing really comes in. It comes into play, and then also behavior responses. Some people tend to adapt to stress fairly well. I mean, you see some people, man, they live in the pressure cooker, and they're just they go around, they go around. You're like, what's this? Who is this guy? Like Superman? And then
what's your secret? Yeah,
what's your secret? And they're like, I could just handle the stress better. And then you have some people have a little stress and they can't adapt at all. So
well, that's the interesting thing is you can ask what's your secret to somebody that seems like they're managing all that, and it might not work for you. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. So what you have, that's why it's so important. Like, again, I'm not trying to bust on medical care, because
it has its lane.
It has their lane. But the problem with medical care is they tend to look at everybody as the same. Here's the drug. This is the drug you get. Well, again, that drug doesn't work on every plus, you want to try to find is what's the individual person's weaknesses, and how do you build those weaknesses, and how do you develop strategies so you can manage these things?
Yeah. What we do know, though, is stress does respond pretty similarly in the body the same. We do know what it does to some of our organs and some things when we are stressed. So let's take a look at some of that.
Yeah. So stress is perceived in the brain. Okay. We see it, we feel it, and stuff. So what happens? You release adrenocortical stimulating hormone, which drops out the adrenal glands. Everybody goes, oh, it's the adrenal glands. And the adrenal glands kick out adrenaline. So that's that flight. I got to run away. And then after that adrenal kind of drops out, your body will then punch out cortisol. Well, cortisol and adrenaline will up your heart rate, because I'm going to fly away, and it increases your lungs capacity. Because why? I want to run away, and it stimulates your liver. And this is where like the weight issues and things like that come in, because it stimulates your liver to release glycogen into glucose into the bloodstream. Because again, we're getting ready to fight or fly. So we want to have that energy available to the muscles to run or to fight. And then of course, what it does to our kind of basically overall parasympathetic nervous system, our like long-term stuff like your digestive tract and things like that, it kind of shuts it down. Of course, the blood pressure goes up because you're back into that fight or flight problem. And the thing about the stress response, this is only supposed to be on for a very short period of time. So you have a stressor, like someone's going to attack you, and that once you've gotten away or you fought it off, that stress is supposed to go away. But the problem is
we've turned it up to 11 in our society.
Yeah, we have. And so mental stress, emotional stress is your body responds to just the same as a guy or a tiger. I tell people a tiger jumping out of out of the woods at you. Your body says,
Right.
all it says is, I got stress. And the
Yeah.
problem you have is when the system stays on all the time, that's where all these health issues start to come in.
Well, and
And
that's
so,
where we were talking last week about how sleep then pushes some of these, pushes these toxins out, relaxes these systems, lets them repair themselves. So we're combining this lack of sleep with high tuned stress all the time. And our system is getting to where it's wanting to say, I've had enough. And that's where the
Mhm.
breakdowns are coming. And then we've got all the pharmaceuticals and all the other stuff instead
Yeah.
of finding ways to reset, get good sleep, and remove stress from our lives.
Yeah. And here's, and what we're finding, which I think is very scary, is that we're seeing these issues getting into a younger and younger and younger population.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're seeing kids in their teens, because they're getting through so much bad stuff thrown at them in society, and again, social media, and keep up with the person that's over here, and just you're seeing these kids coming in, they're losing their hair, they're overweight, they got all these health issues.
Wow.
And a big problem that they have is, again, family stress. People try to adapt, and so they look at convenience. And the problem with it, as I've always said, convenience kills, and it's really not convenient. And these things keep going. That's kind of why we put our eating program together, because what we've done with that is taken the stress out of, well, what is healthy food for me? So we have it on our site. We have these great recipes that people can have. Those foods start to balance your blood sugar levels. They start to bring your insulin levels down. They start to feed you the nutrients that your body needs so it can handle stress. You'll actually increase your energy systems. And the other cool effect of it, it's a kind of a side thing that we see with families is, again, this is kind of a thing I tell patients: for us to go forward in our health, we're going to have to go backwards. And what I mean by that, we're going to have to go back to eating healthy foods, figuring out what's really important for us, which should be your family. Okay. And then, and so what's interesting about the eating program that we get a lot of feedback, especially from families, is that the moms and the dads are, because moms and dads are more cooking together, but you're cooking a meal together. And I tell the parents, when you're making these meals, teach these kids how to make these meals. Because the other thing that's cool about it, when the kid cooks the meal, guess what they want to do? They want to eat that meal. Plus, they want to eat that meal at the table with their mom and their dad.
Yeah, because they were invested in it. Yeah,
that's right. And they get to show them. And guess what happens? You're starting to sit back down at the table together as a family, and you start to talk to each other, and you start to make those reconnections and all those things.
And maybe even turn the TV off. Yeah.
And what happens that's really cool about it is that you think, oh, wait a minute, this is not. And so what you look at, it's not just a eating program. Again, we market it as a weight loss program because everybody wants weight loss, but it's actually, let's get healthy program. Let's focus on health. And like I said, the unintended consequences of it is we're seeing emotional health and family health improve with the program that we have patients doing.
Yeah, and that's new-lifeweightloss.com. If you want to check that out, if you're listening on the podcast, on the YouTube channel, you saw the graphic. I know, Dr. Tyndall, we're running out of time for this episode, but you had one more system you wanted to look at as it relates to stress and what it does to the HPA axis, and you can explain what that is.
So the HPA axis, and actually, if you go onto YouTube to our New Life Naturopathic YouTube channel, actually, I did a longer video on the HPA axis and kind of how it affects. But basically, HPA axis, hypothalamus pituitary axis. This is kind of the hormonal system of how it works when you're under stress. So the hypothalamus, which is up in the brain, perceives stress. It releases cortical releasing hormone down to the pituitary, which releases adrenocortical hormone, which goes down to the adrenal glands, which tells those glands to release adrenaline or cortisol. And you release the cortisol, which has a metabolic effect on inside the body, which we saw on the other slide. And this has a feedback mechanism. So what happens is once your cortisol levels get high enough, it starts to have a negative feedback. It starts to shut the system down. the problem again that we deal with is once the stress kind of goes away, this system should shut down. And the problem is that that stress doesn't ever go away.
Yeah, we're not giving it a chance. Yeah,
we're not giving it a chance. And so, so what we have to do is, what do we do to get rid of this stress? And then, as far as nutritionally, what do we do? How do we do things to support the pituitary gland? How do we do things nutrition to support the thyroid? How do we do nutrition to support these systems that are getting broke down, like the adrenal glands and things like that? How do we repair these? Plus, develop with you as a patient strategies, and that's where that, again, as a naturopathic comes with working with the doctors, because we're going to analyze your life and we're going to talk to you and work with you on saying, okay, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you? So it all becomes an individualized program and effort to get you as healthy as we can. So that's why it's good to have somebody that like us that you have to work with to get your life straightened back out and get you as healthy as you can. And then we also have Karen. She's a life coach that you can hire to help. And then we also have people that do mental health therapies that we refer to, that do like distance work and stuff that we work with also. So it's like I said, what we're trying to do is focus on people's health, address it from multiple aspects, like which in your social life, your business life, your work life, your emotional life, and then as far as chemically and physically, getting the right supplements, getting the right foods, trying to take some of these, how do I do it, off the table so it makes it a lot easier for you.
Well, and we've talked about it as a holistic approach for sure. And then accountability is a big part of that, which is one of the things that New Life Weight Loss does. New-lifeweightloss.com gives you an opportunity to get a shopping list and personal coach there, like you were talking about, and some of the other things that helps get through that. So we encourage you to check that website out. We also encourage you to go to newlifenaturopathic.com for some of these services that we're talking about. Some of the testing and some of that stuff is available no matter where you are. So we're grateful that we have those avenues to show you about as well. And this podcast pointing you to that and the information that we get to share. We're grateful to have this platform to have these discussions. Well, we will come along the next time. We're building up to some things to talk about. So if you have friends that you think could benefit from this information, and of course, we all have stress that we deal with and we want to do better. So make sure you're sharing this with your friends. There's always good information each week. Each Friday, a new episode comes out. And so we're thankful that we get to do this, and we would love to see you next time on Pursuit of New Life.
Thanks, Quincy.
Thanks, Quincy.